Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join PSAC members across the National Capital Region and Quebec. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the federal government's plans to radically change sick leave in the federal public service. We're also here to give you an opportunity to ask questions about sick leave and collective bargaining. My name is Larry Rousseau. I'm the PSAC Regional Executive Vice President for the National Capital Region, and I will be your host for tonight. Tonight we have PSAC Research Officer Bonnie Bates on the call. She has been doing extensive research on the sick leave changes the government has been hinting at over the past year. She is here to help answer your questions as well. For those of you who have just joined the call, I'm Larry Rousseau, PSAC Regional Executive Vice President for the National Capital Region, and I'm your host for tonight's telephone town hall, where we are calling PSAC members across the National Capital Region and Quebec. The main topic for our call tonight is sick leave in the federal public service. However, I want to acknowledge that we have members on the line who work for other employers. We call separate employers and not just Treasury Board. How do the Conservative government's plans for sick leave affect you? We know the government is determined to try to take away as many of our negotiated benefits as possible. That's the example they're setting for other employers. The government's last budget bill, C4, seriously watered down health and safety protection under the Canada Labour Code. Now, at least 1 million workers in the federal, private, and public sectors are more at risk than ever when they are at work. Government MPs, including the Minister of Labour, voted for Private Members Bill C-525. It's aimed at making it harder for workers to organize. Government ministers regularly make comments putting down the role of unions and unionized workers. This government is continually sending a message that it's okay for employers to go after workers and the salaries and benefits they've negotiated in their collective agreements. So, it's important that we stand together when any employer tries to take away our hard-earned benefits. It's important that we stand together for decent working conditions and a good balance between our work and our personal lives. Sick leave plays an important role in that work-life balance. That's why we'll be fighting for it. Now, here's a quick breakdown of what we know so far. The government wants to get rid of the current sick leave system and introduce a short-term disability plan instead. They want to overhaul the long-term disability plan and integrate it with the short-term disability plan. They want this new system to be in place by July 2016. This year, they would start the contract process to choose an outside provider from the private sector for the new short-term disability plan and an overhauled long-term disability plan, and they would award this contract as early as 2015. Treasury Board wants all employees to be put on the new system of sick leave, and that's both unionized and excluded employees. The government also wants to eventually include separate employers in the new short-term and long-term disability plan. Treasury Board says that its proposals are based on the belief that work is good for health. So that gives you a good idea of the employer's approach. While Treasury Board may claim that this new strategy is about employee wellness, it's really about restricting access to leave, reducing the number of sick leave and disability claims, and contracting out the administration and management of sick leave and disability insurance. But most of all, folks, it's about cost cutting. They want to cut costs by reducing the use of sick leave, by reducing the amount of paid leave and salary replacement, and by shortening periods of leave. They also want to cut costs through more aggressive case management. That's a really neat term they're using, folks, case management. In other words, getting members back to work faster, whether or not they are better. We know this because Treasury Board recently issued a tender for a sick leave consultant. It says the winning bidder should have a proven track record of success in reducing sick leave claims. Many of our members have already experienced just how badly insurance companies treat our sick and injured members. We also know the government wants more control over the use of sick leave as a way to manage what it says is high absenteeism. But ironically, by contracting out, they'd be turning control over to an outside company to manage sick leave, disability, and return to work. We know the current sick leave system is not perfect. Some employees do not have access to the sick leave they need, but there are ways to address these concerns without reducing everyone's sick leave. One of the things the government has been saying is that federal government employees use too much sick leave, but Tony Clement's numbers just don't add up. He's been saying the average federal public sector worker takes 18 days of sick leave a year, when we only get 15 days a year. Our research indicates that members take between 0 and 8 days of sick leave a year for the type of leave where you call in because you're not feeling well. And we're not alone. In February, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, Jean-Denis Fréchette, issued a report on sick leave in the federal public sector, and it criticized Treasury Board for including injury on duty leave and disability leave and mixing in paid and unpaid leave in order to inflate the numbers. The report concluded that the average number of paid sick days taken was 11.5, not the 18 that Tony Clement claimed. It also turns out the difference between the public and private sector is only about 1 day, and that was from a report from Statistics Canada. And that is not the huge gap that the government has been claiming it is. An honest comparison of public and private sector sick leave points to problems in the private sector. Many private sector workers aren't paid when they're sick, so they aren't counted as being on sick leave. Statistics Canada reports that once gender, age, and unionization are taken into account, there's little difference between sick leave rates in the public and the private sectors. Treasury Board also talks about rising absenteeism. If managers suspect that some employees are abusing their sick leave, they already have the tools to deal with these individual cases. They approve our members' leave requests in the first place. They have the ability to ask for doctor's notes for illnesses longer than a few days. The current sick leave system doesn't need to be changed to deal with suspected cases of absenteeism. This is a management problem. Besides, workers shouldn't be going to work when they're sick. It slows down recovery, it puts co-workers at risk of illness, and undermines their ability to deliver vital services. And frontline workers who are sick on the job risk infecting the Canadians they serve. So how do we go about protecting our sick leave? Our current system is negotiated. That means Treasury Board can only change it through collective bargaining. Sick leave is one of the reasons the next round of bargaining is so important. It's also why it's going to be so important for every member to be involved in the bargaining process and stand strong behind our bargaining team. So over the next few months, you will be notified of membership meetings and other events related to bargaining. It's important that we all participate and encourage our co-workers to do the same. We need to speak to others about the issue, including our families and friends. The current government keeps talking about how we are overpaid and that we abuse sick leave and other negotiated rights, and we know that this is not true. We need to counter this misinformation in every way we can. We are on this call to hear your concerns about the issue and to get your ideas as well for how to defend our sick leave. Right now, we are being joined on the call by thousands of PSAC members from across the National Capital Region and Quebec. I would also like to add that our Treasury Board bargaining teams met all last week to finalize our demands. We're taking a proactive position, and we're putting forward demands to deal with the issues in the workplace that our members have raised. And of course, we will be fighting for sick leave. As many of you on the call may know, we've just signed a new agreement on the Public Service Health Care Plan. You should know that discussions about the plan are done as a partner committee, and that is different from the actual collective bargaining process. However, we were able to make major changes in spite of the government's threats. And speaking of the government, we're now dealing with their latest budget implementation legislation, which is known as Bill C-31. We're in the process of analyzing the almost 400 pages of this omnibus bill. It's called the Economic Action Plan 214 Act number 1. So we can expect that there will be another one in the fall. What we do know about this bill is that the government has decided not to honor any of the agreements we've made around essential services. According to Bill C-31, we'll have to negotiate them all over again, and we'll have to do it for each round of negotiations. The bill reverses all the work that was done as a result of the Public Service Modernization Act that was adopted about 10 years ago. But that's typical of this government. They're all about going backwards, not forwards. So I think that we'll go to our first caller, and our first caller is Diane, and she has a question about sick leave. Yeah, so absolutely, and you're right when you say that you've earned it, and we have earned it, and it's a right in our collective agreements. And I just want to say that there's going to be a lot of stuff being said out there, right? You're going to go into the workplace, you're going to go to your stores, you're going to go out, on the weekends and meet people, and they're going to tell you that this happened over at this employer or this happened over at Canada Post, etc. We have nothing on the table right now from Treasury Board. Okay? So anything at this point is speculation. All right? So there's nothing, whether it's 10%, whatever you've been told, there is nothing right now. All we can say is that we know that the government wants to go to a short-term disability plan. What it will actually look like, we can't tell at this point. But I can tell you one thing, and I'll tell you that whatever they want us to go to is not going to be anywhere as good as what we've got now. All right? So I really thank you for the question, and we've got lots of callers on the line. So we're going to go to, thank you for that call, Diane. We have Patrick on the line. Okay, and he has a question about the Parliamentary Budget Officer report and the average days of sick leave. Patrick? Okay, so in the 11.5 figure that the Parliamentary Budget Officer came out with, and in fact that Statistics Canada also came out with, so two independent studies going on here, and StatsCan came out with 11.4, Parliamentary Budget Officer came out with 11.5. I can tell you that that did not include, disability leave. You can't be comparing apples and oranges. We have different types of sick leave. What the government has been telling people is that we use over 18 days of sick leave. And to the public at large, it sounds as if 18 days of the year, you're calling up your supervisor and you're saying, you know what, I can't come in today, I'm sick, I'm not feeling well. When that is absolutely false. So that's why we said from 0 to 8 days in our own studies has been the type of sick leave where you're not feeling well. When you throw in some of that longer term stuff, somebody's going for chemo, using up accumulated sick leave for the longer, for the more serious illnesses, that brings us up to the 11.5 paid days, paid sick leave. That's 11.5, okay? Then you can start talking about the unpaid leave, that you're on sick leave but unpaid. But that's not what we're talking about, especially what the government's talking about when they're saying that we're not coming into work and that we're abusing sick leave. So it's really important that we talk about the right things. So Patrick, I thank you for your question, and we have lots of questions, lots of callers on the line. So I'm going to go to Peter. And thank you for that question, Peter. And you're absolutely right. It's PSAC. I'm glad that you corrected yourself that time. We don't say PSAC, but we do say PSAC, and we're proud to. I'm just going to say, as far as the strategy going forward, you know, Peter, when we were at the bargaining conference in February, we made it clear that we were allowing all the delegates to come together and put all demands on the table. In previous rounds, we've limited it to a certain number, but we want to prove a point, a very important point here. Collective bargaining just isn't about the money. It's not just about the sick leave, but collective bargaining demands is also about improving the workplace and the working conditions for all of our members. So we have a whole a whole bunch of demands that are on the table right now that people have been waiting years and years to talk about and resolve. And we're putting them on the table this time, which means that we are going to take the time to actually look at all of them, make sure that the government also looks at them, and that's what we want to negotiate, all right? So, because it's been a while now, in previous rounds we've had very limited stuff that we could talk about. We're going to talk about all of the stuff, and we are going to take our time to go that. Now, eventually, it comes down to the point where we'll have an agreement or we'll be coming close to an agreement, and we get into a process. As you know, the process is very well. If you're on a conciliation route for strike, then it will be up to the membership, the bargaining team, to be making recommendations on whether, we should walk, etc., and, members vote on that. So if you are in tune now, if you are in touch with your local and with your union executive, etc., you will be able to follow this process, and it's not going to come as a surprise to you. In fact, you will be following closely what's going on, and if, at the end of this process, it comes to a question of having to walk, well, you know what? It will not be a surprise, and it will be a decision that the majority of the members would have to make. Okay? So thanks for that question, Peter. The double-barreled question. Very good. We're going to go next to Kim. That's a great question. And thank you for that question, Kim, because what we've done is I've got to talk to you about the Pact of Solidarity that we have signed with 17 other bargaining agents in the federal sector, okay? Imagine that. This has never happened ever in the history of labor relations and collective bargaining in the public service. 17 unions have come together, and you'll hear us talking about, in the National Capital Region, activities, joint activities that are being organized, such as May Day, which is just in 2 days, between PSAC, PIPS, and CAPE. And we're working together with these three major unions in mobilizing our members, getting information out. I've been giving talks and been going to locals where we've had members from these three unions coming into the room and asking questions, and I've been joined by a member from the staff of CAPE, for example, or somebody from PIPS, and we answer questions and we give the information. So not only have we approached other unions to fight together, but we're actually working together to make sure that we are going to have a united, common front against this employer in the coming round of negotiations, and this is something that this employer has never seen before as well. So we are. And not only that, but I can tell you that I was at the Ontario Federation of Labour Convention back in November, and at the Ontario Federation of Labour, which groups other public sector unions at the provincial level and at the municipal level, such as CUPE and the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation, and other unions have come together to say that an injury to one is an injury to all, which is one of our most famous expressions in the labor movement, and they passed a resolution unanimously to say that they will stand behind PSAC in its fight. And such resolutions have also been passed in other provincial federations of labor, as well as the CLC has come out, and we know that the Canadian Labour Congress is behind us in this fight as well. So we're organizing, brother, like we've never organized before. Thanks, Kim, for that great question. We're going to go on to Kathy. There are many aspects to your question, but most of the answers to your question are yes, yes, and yes. So first of all, let's get down to your local level. Absolutely, whatever actions are going on in Sherbrooke, of course, you're coming under the Quebec region, so there's a lot of stuff that's going to be going on at the local level, and that's why we're encouraging all members to stay in touch with their local executive. So you'll get more information from your local executive as to specific actions that are going on at your workplace where you are. We absolutely want to use social media, whether it be Twitter, whether it be Facebook, and those means of communicating amongst members. Absolutely, we're on that. And you should go to the PSAC website, okay? And if you just Google PSAC, you'll get our website. It will be the first hit, and you'll be able to see on the website by going to your region, which is Quebec region, or for those in Ontario or the NCR, National Capital Region, you'll be able to go to the regional websites and see what's going on specifically in your area. As far as communications is concerned, and countering the misinformation, it is very important to realize that absolutely there is information that is being driven by certain groups such as the Fraser Institute, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, these corporate groups that want to see our benefits reduced, our rights in collective agreements reduced. Why? Because then it reduces the expectations of workers in the private sector. So the private sector media is certainly doing what they can to bash the public service employees, etc. We have to stand strong and stand tall, counter that information, and we are. We are doing that, and especially if you go into alternative media as well. Look beyond, the Journal de Montréal or, even the Montreal Gazette, or the Toronto papers and the Ottawa papers, and go online and go to places where you can see where we have people and we have organizations that are standing up for better public services, because a strong Canada is a Canada with strong and vibrant and quality public services being delivered to all members of the population. So, Kathy, good luck with those actions out in Sherbrooke. It's called Solidarity. Work with your sisters and brothers in the other unions, and I'm looking forward to hearing some good news from those actions. We have Mark on the line. Okay, so that's a very good question, and it gets back to the point that we were making earlier about it being somewhat speculative to know what specific provisions will be there. But I'd like to just pass it over to Bonnie, who is our PSAC research officer, and we haven't heard from her yet. But not only, Bonnie, about banked sick leave, but perhaps, on this question of sick leave as well, the Treasury Board has come out, with a statement on its website. It has sent emails to employees and to our members talking about the new wellness strategy, and they are making reference about, short-term disability and stuff. So if we could just answer Mark's question about bank sick leave, talk about that a little bit, but also, as long as we're on sick leave, I want to take the opportunity at this point to even talk about their tactics right now regarding wellness.
Great. Thank you, Larry. And thank you, caller. As Larry has mentioned previously, we have not yet received an actual proposal from Treasury Board on what they want to do with sick leave. And I want to stress that this is an employer demand. It's not a PSAC demand. We are looking to improve sick leave. They want to destroy it essentially by turning it into a short-term disability plan. Larry mentioned that members in the federal public sector received an email about the workplace wellness strategy. And in that, it does refer to some of the things that the employer wants to do with sick leave. I want to stress that the employer made it sound in their email like this is a done deal, and it is not a done deal. Sick leave must be negotiated with your union, PSAC, and that has not taken place yet. And like I say, we want to improve sick leave, not make it worse. In terms of bank sick leave, the employer recognizes that they need to negotiate this with us. We don't know what their plan is because we haven't seen a proposal as yet. But certainly looking at other plans, we've seen the Canada Post model where they basically forced the payout of the banks, and they of course severely devalued the sick leave banks, and people got pennies on the dollar kind of thing in terms of the days that they were worth. But I just want to caution people, there's a lot of rumors out there about what's going on, but we haven't started bargaining yet. We haven't received a proposal from the employer, and despite these emails that are going out on the workplace wellness strategy, it's not a done deal. It's not in place yet. We haven't negotiated it. So just when you hear people talking in the workplace and being really worried about, this has already happened, what's going on, I'm really concerned, just remind people to check the PSAC website for information. We've got lots of information there on what's going on with the workplace wellness strategy emails that you're receiving, what our position is on sick leave, and to stay in touch with your bargaining team as we progress in bargaining, because it's going to be really important that people are informed and stay together and push back on whatever the employer proposes on sick leave.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. And I just want to remind folks as well, remember that our sick leave provisions in our collective agreement are non-monetary provisions, all right? And in the past, if you'll recall, when we've been at the table before, back in the 80s and the 90s, when the various governments, back in the 80s it was Mulroney, in the 90s it was Chrétien, and they would keep telling us to reduce our expectations as far as salary increases. And in many cases, when they wanted to tie our hands behind our backs by saying you can't ask for too much of a wage increase, well, we'd go and negotiate some improvements to non-monetary benefits. And sick leave is a non-monetary benefit, all right? And that's something that we want to recall that we keep because we got those very often in lieu of money that we wanted at the table and that we weren't able to get. So I just want to remind people that your banked sick leave, all right, is worth something, and it's not something you would just want to give away. Okay, Louise, we have Louise on the line, and wow, I don't know how you did that, Louise, but out of the thousands of calls, we managed to get, Louise said, listen, I'm on the call, and Louise is a member of our PA group, PA unit bargaining team, and so Louise, you're on the line. It's like a radio program. You've called in. I'd like you to say a few words. Louise, are you there?
I am certainly here, Larry. I'm very here.
Good to hear from you. So go ahead, sister, and say what you have to say.
Listen, folks, I'm not repeating what Larry says. I'm going to say what I got to say. I'm just saying that the PA bargaining team, we've met, we're talking, we're putting our bargaining demands together, and we're working hard for you guys. The number one important thing is you folks. And you know what? We're 78,000 strong, and that's who we're bargaining for. We're not bargaining for individual people.
Well, thank you very much, Louise. And that's what it really comes down to. When we're at the table and we're bargaining, what our members need to remember is that we are there negotiating, defending, and making sure that your best interests, okay, are there. And so we are, in fact, negotiating the best collective bargaining provisions that we can get for all of our members, not just for a few. Okay? Thank you so much, Louise, for having called in. And they are working very hard. It's a crackerjack team we've got. Amanda, we have Amanda on the line, okay? And she has a question regarding bargaining strategy and what are our demands. So, Amanda, are you on the line? That's a very good question, Louise, Amanda, and I'm going to mention something. You know what? It's not ours. You know, it's great. I think that we should always use the expression, it's not a you and us type of situation. The bargaining demands that were put together at our conference were delegates that were selected from across the country who came to a bargaining conference, and those delegates in turn elected members to the team. All right? So we had members come to Ottawa from across the country, and all these demands came together. And they had to work very hard to prioritize what the demands are. So the thing to remember is that the demands themselves are prioritized by delegates who are representing the mass membership out there. And all of those demands came from locals who asked, okay? So I'm going to pass it over to Bonnie, who's going to be able to maybe elaborate a bit on that and talk a bit more about strategy. And we may have time for just one more question after that, okay? All right, go ahead, Bonnie.
Great, thanks, Larry. The strategy we have is to improve sick leave, not to dismantle it. We know the employer is coming with something on sick leave, a short-term disability plan, as outlined, but we don't have the details. But we're committed to, first of all, saying no to concessions, and secondly, saying yes to improvements. You know, we know the current plan isn't perfect. There's issues with, for example, paying for doctor's notes, which can get really expensive, so let's try to improve that. We also have an issue of fairness. There are members who have reoccurring illnesses. There are members who are new hires who don't have enough sick leave credits. And members have rightly pointed out that this isn't fair, that we need to fix the system we have to make it better for people who do face reoccurring illnesses or who are new hires and don't have the sick leave that they need right away. So let's look at some positive solutions to that. You know, sharing of credits, pooling of credits, different ways of accumulating credits. You know, ways that are not about charity but about improving fairness across both generations and you know, across the workplace. So you know, we're about bringing positive solutions to the table for improving the current system. We are against, however, dismantling the system, turning it into a short-term disability plan, contracting it out, and seeing our members' rights reduced and their access to sick leave reduced. We want to make things better, not worse.
And thank you, Bonnie, for saying that. You know, our strategy as well for bargaining is that, look, we have these benefits, we have these rights. Why would we give them away? So, you know, there is no hurry here for us to put any concessions, and we're not, and let me say one thing. Our national president, Robin Benson, has made it very clear. We're not going to negotiate or give away our sick leave. No concessions. That's our bottom line. So if you want to know what the overall strategy is, we're not giving it up, folks. We're going to fight to keep it. That's one thing. So I think that it's very important that we remember that as far as all of this is concerned, the government does have something in the back of their minds which is very disturbing to me, and that is that right now, if you're sick and you don't come in tomorrow, there's somebody who's actually going to come in off your team and do your work, or your work is waiting for you when you come back. It's not actually costing them dollars and cents right away to replace you, all right, while you're off 2 or 3 days. But one thing that is going to cost this government $1 billion or $1.5 billion a year is the management of sick leave that they're going to contract out. You know what? We have to conclude the call. We're out of time, folks. This could go on all night. You know, I could do this all night. It's really fun, and it's great fun to talk to members. So there's been a lot of good discussion tonight. There've been great. The questions were excellent, folks. Just excellent, because this is exactly the kinds of questions that I was looking forward to and that we needed to hear. Okay? I want to thank each and every one of you. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules, okay, at home, to find out about the Conservative government's plans for sick leave, and by telling us about your concerns on this and other important issues. I want to thank Bonnie Bates, our PSAC research officer, for being with us to answer your questions. This is the time we all need to stand up against clawbacks in our collective agreements. As I said, Robin Benson has said, no concessions, all right? Remember to attend the regional meetings that are going to be held over the coming month and into June and into the summer and even into the fall. If you hear there's a meeting going on, come on out, because then you got the one-on-one going on, you're meeting other co-workers, etc., so come on out. I want to let you know, okay, that I will be attending many of these meetings. I'm not going to be able to get out to all of them, but the purpose of the meetings is to give you information about the negotiations, and you need to be informed. All right? You have to be kept up to date. Don't depend on the employer for the information. It's one-sided, folks, coming from that. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this important call tonight. Visit our webpage and contact your closest PSAC regional office to keep yourselves up to date on bargaining. Have a good evening, everyone. Good night.